Putin be inspired by fellow ICC fugitive Netanyahu to take a more circuitous route to his destination? U.S. President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin shake hands during a news conference following their meeting to negotiate an end to the war in Ukraine at Joint Base Elmendorf-Richardson in Anchorage, Alaska, U.S., August 15, 2025. By Lorraine Mallender and news agencies. Russian President Vladimir Putin is set to visit Hungary in the very near future, where he will meet United States counterpart Donald Trump for a second summit on ending the war in Ukraine. The first, in Alaska in August, failed to result in any agreement. But with an International Criminal Court (ICC) warrant issued in 2023 for Putin's arrest over the alleged illegal deportation of Ukrainian children during Russia's war with Ukraine, how will the fugitive from justice make it to the negotiating table? Signatories of the 1998 Rome Statute, which established the Hague-based court in 2002, are required to arrest those subject to warrants as soon as they enter their territory, which theoretically includes airspace, which is also considered sovereign territory under international law. Hungary, which recently stated its intention to withdraw from the agreement, making it a safe space for Putin, is surrounded by countries which would be bound by this. However, the ICC, which has 125 member states, has no police force and hence no means of enforcing arrests. So what awaits Putin on his upcoming jaunt? Hungary's Prime Minister Viktor Orban and Russia's President Vladimir Putin attend a news conference following their meeting in Moscow, Russia, July 5, 2024. Evgenia Novozhenina, Reuters. What about airspace? Could he be intercepted mid-air? As Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said on Friday, many questions need to be resolved before Putin sets off on his journey. One of those questions is likely to regard the president's flight path. Putin will probably want to avoid the Baltic states, after recent violations of Estonia's airspace by Russian jets, which have put the region on high alert for a potential overspill from the Ukraine war. The Baltics could well force a hard landing. Friendly Belarus might provide a convenient corridor between the Baltics and Ukraine, further south. But this would set the president on course for Poland, which has historically strained relations with the Kremlin and recently warned Europe to prepare for a deep Russian strike on its territory. Russian drones have also recently breached Polish airspace. Slovakia, which is led by Moscow-leaning populist Robert Fico, is still guzzling Russian energy in defiance of Trump's orders to European countries to stop oil and gas imports and may be more accommodating. Indeed, Fico is on a collision course with fellow EU members over sanctions against Moscow, but Putin would still need to cross Poland before reaching Slovakia. Putin's direct route to Budapest, therefore, appears littered with obstacles. What about a more circuitous route? Putin may be inspired by fellow ICC fugitive Netanyahu, wanted for crimes including using starvation as a weapon of war against Palestinian civilians in war-ravaged Gaza, who avoided several European countries on his way to the UN General Assembly, UNGA, in New York last month. The Israeli Prime Minister's wing of Zion plane briefly flew over Greek and Italian territory, but then ducked south, entirely avoiding French and Spanish airspace before heading over the Atlantic, according to Flight Radar 24. Flying south could be an option for Putin as well. Georgia, whose Georgian Dream governing party suspended Tbilisi's bid to join the European Union, is a signatory to the Rome Statute, but could potentially be relied on to turn a blind eye. And Turkey, which is not a party to the Rome Statute, but which has long walked a tightrope between Russia and NATO and hosted previous attempts between Russian and Ukrainian negotiators on ending the war, could be amenable to allowing the Russian president to pass. From there, the main obstacle would be Greece, providing a route through the Balkan states to Orban's respectful welcome. Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban speaks to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu during a welcoming ceremony at the Lions Courtyard in Budapest, Hungary on April 3, 2025. Bernadette Szabo, Reuters. Has Putin made other trips since becoming an internationally wanted war criminal? Putin has clearly limited his travels since the ICC warrant was issued. Last year, he hopped over the border to ICC member Mongolia, where he was treated to a lavish ceremony featuring soldiers on horseback by Mongolian President Ukhnagin Khurelsukh. Mongolia has very friendly relations with Russia, on which it depends for fuel and electricity. The country has refrained from condemning Russia's offensive in Ukraine and has abstained during votes on the conflict at the UN, so it was little surprised to see the red carpet being rolled out. Flying to Alaska for a bilateral with Trump last August was easy since the president could completely avoid hostile countries, flying over his country's huge landmass over the Bering Strait to the US, which is not a signatory to the Rome Statute. Similarly, this year's visit to old friend and neighbor Xi Jinping for a huge military parade and a summit of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization posed no problem since China is not a party to the ICC. This month, the Russian president met Central Asian leaders with whom he is eager to bolster ties in Tajikistan, the International Criminal Court, ICC, in The Hague, Netherlands, on September 22, 2025, file Piroshka van de Wouw Reuters. Will Putin ever be arrested? The arrest warrants mark the first step towards an eventual trial. Although the capture of Russia's president is almost inconceivable, only a few national leaders have ended up in The Hague. The former Philippine president, Rodrigo Duterte, surrendered to The Hague earlier this year to face charges of crimes against humanity. The charges pertain to extrajudicial killings committed during his widely condemned war on drugs, which killed thousands of people. The former Liberian president and warlord, Charles Taylor, was convicted in 2012 by the UN-backed Special Court for Sierra Leone, which held proceedings in The Hague. He was found guilty of 11 counts of war crimes and crimes against humanity,